Welcome back to the channel. I'm Wyatt Humphreys, and today we're doing a review of the FlyFishRC VOLADOR. Today's video is such a significant one for my channel because it's the first time that a company has sent me a frame to review. Before we get started, there's something we need to clarify. They did send me this frame for free to review, but all the opinions in this video are my own, as they didn't pay me and they didn't tell me to say anything. And you'll see from the flying footage, at no point was I babying this thing or trying to make it look better than it is. The only other review I've done on this channel is of the Bardwell DIY, which I'll link in the description below. And the best part about that video, and the reason it was so thorough, is I had been flying that frame for months before I reviewed it. And now that I'm reviewing other frames, with this one being the first of many in the coming months, I've come up with a structure for this review video and the others that I think you're gonna love. And this new type of review video is what we're gonna call FPV Hell Week. I got the inspiration for this review series from the Navy SEAL training practice that's also called Hell Week. Now, Hell Week is a 5.5 day long stretch in which Navy SEALs only sleep 4 hours for that entire time period. Over those 5.5 days, they train for 20 plus hours a day and run 200 miles total. So my thinking is, if an FPV quad is gonna make it into my arsenal, it's gonna have to get through Hell Week first. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the footage that I've gotten from this past week of trying my absolute hardest to destroy this thing. Before anything, I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons. I'm on a mission to try to make this channel not a complete financial loss, and you guys are making that so much more possible by supporting me every month on Patreon. So head over there if you feel like it, and let's get on with the video. Alright, so for day one, we have the starting point of every FPV drone, which is the build. Now, this build actually ended up taking me 11 hours from sunset to sunrise, but that wasn't any fault of the frame. My electronics were being such a pain. As for the frame, it was really easy to put together. Some initial impressions on the build that I absolutely loved and that now I don't think I could live without are, one, the hexagonal standoffs. So all the standoffs in this build are hexagonal, and in the base plate of the frame, there's countersunk hexagonal holes that they fit into perfectly. Now, the reason I love this is when you're tearing it down for a repair, it's always so annoying when you have a circular standoff that just freely rotates because there's a loose screw. And the thing you have to do with round standoffs is take 2 hexagonal drivers, or Allen keys, so that when you're loosening, you don't just spin the standoff freely. So that's a really big convenience to me, and I love it so far. The second thing that stuck out to me in this build is the built-in XT60 plug right here. When I was routing the power lead out the side and just strapping it to the battery, whenever my battery ejected, just absolutely ripping on the power lead, causing unnecessary strain to the stack. The third thing I really liked about this build is the camera plates. This is my first build using aluminum CNC camera plates, and so far I haven't really noticed much of a difference, other than I found it a lot more convenient to put together because I didn't have to line up the tabs in the normal carbon fiber ones with the top plate, and that's just an annoying process. So I definitely feel like the camera plates were an upgrade. The third thing I wanted to mention is the arms that actually get thicker in the middle. I think that's a really cool idea. Obviously, I'm not flying in a lab and all the evidence here is anecdotal, but so far I do think that the thickness in the middle of the arms has led to an increase in durability, and it does just sort of sketch me out when other frames get really thin on the inside there. The last thing I noticed while building this was the TPU that they included. I just think it's sweet cosmetically. It's got this awesome like two-tone green and blue thing going on, and I do think it matches the theme for their drone, which is the VOLADOR, which, if you didn't know, is the scientific name for the flying fish. I should also mention that FlyFish sent me their flash motors, specifically the 2306 1750 kV, and I really enjoy these. They're super smooth. I will say these are a little small for how heavy of a build I like to run, and I do prefer closer to 1850, but they do have some other motors that I like to try out that are in that range, so maybe in the future I'll do that. The other thing they sent me is their Osprey antenna. I really like these, but they sent me 2 and I broke both of them in like 3 days. I don't really think they're for freestyle like bashing. That would be a really cool thing for them to add in the future, is a TPU part for the VOLADOR that has a slot for the Osprey antenna to just get in there nice and snug and have more protection. Look, I know I said I was gonna fly, but day one I drove all the way to Pasadena, and within like 2 hours I hit the GoPro so hard that it deleted all the footage and broke the SD card, so all I have is my reaction kit. As for the frame though, day one was a success and it looked good as new, so on to day 2. Day 2 was the day where I broke my GoPro screen, which sucks so much because since then it's gotten worse and worse to the point where it just won't even turn on sometimes. On this day, I actually found a new spot near my house with this workout equipment, and I was trying to gap between these metal bars, which admittedly was a little sketchy. On this day, the quad felt probably better than anything I've ever flown. Absolutely shredding. There was just zero vibrations and it felt amazing. I ended up getting the clip despite my GoPro screen breaking, and day 2, success. It has survived. And now we're on to day 3, which was admittedly the darkest day of my FPV career. I went all the way to the bridge again with my friend Finley. He was hitting clips that day. It was like an insane day of flying. And we went up to the secondary spot that we haven't spent that much time flying in, and I wanted to do this power loop to Maddie. Actually, on my very first flight up, I succeeded. It went fine. So I got a little confident as I was getting clips for Instagram, and this ended up happening.
Bro, you don't have to do it. You don't have to. There we go. I just want to get the GoPro away.
Damn. Well, that sucks. So yeah, in retrospect, I think I hit so hard that the ESC shorted against the base plate. When I moved my electronics over from the barred well to the Volador, I don't think I put enough spacers below the ESC, and that impact just pressed it down. And yeah, when I came over, it was shooting like 5-inch flames out the bottom. It was pretty scary. Oh, also, it got so hot that it fully unsoldered everything. Like when I took it apart, I didn't have to unsolder a thing. Every single motor was desoldered, and some of them even connected to each other. Like on one of the arms, all 3 motors were soldered together. I don't even know how that happens. So it was a pretty quick repair because I was able to just pull the ESC out, which was so sad. And thanks Finley for unplugging it, because after I moved it to the gravel where nothing could catch on fire, I kind of froze, so appreciate that. I had to go to Pyrodrone, get a new stack, and luckily the Vista survived. I rebuilt the whole thing, and it was time for day 4. And you may be wondering, how does a fire-damaged quad fly? And the answer is amazing. Day 4 was maybe the best day of flying I've ever had. Me and Finley drove all the way to Santa Barbara to meet another guy I met on YouTube whose name is Elijah. Shout out Elijah, he's the best. He took us to a couple amazing spots in Santa Barbara, including this incredible office park with cool tree gaps and wall rides and all sorts of stuff. And this day was crazy. I flew around 14 packs on this quad in one day and just bashed it into the ground, into the walls. And towards the end of the day, Elijah took us to this crazy quarry spot where everybody basically broke everything. But the Volador survived. And I'll just go ahead and play out some of this footage. Like, a quarry is a pretty rough place to fly because if I'm not bashing into straight steel, it's rock or just really, really solid dirt. And it actually still flies great. It doesn't even look like the arms are beginning to delaminate or anything. And after the fire damage, there was a little bit of flaking with the carbon fibers right near where the fire was, but that was just the top layer. And I was able to sort of like sand that down and it looks fine. It's still super rigid. It still feels like the day I built it after all that. So day 4 was a big success. This brings us to day 5, which is the final day of this Hell Week experiment. I went back to the bridge because apparently that's the only place I fly anymore, and tried a new line, which was really fun. There's this little drop off into the woods where you can hit this gap under the guardrail. And I flew about like 8 packs trying this line. I crashed a lot, but it held up through the whole session. And I ended up getting this really cool line through one of the most scraggly places you could possibly fly a quad. And in the final clip, my props didn't touch a thing, so I'm super satisfied with that. I'll take what I can get. All in all, this frame blew my mind. I cannot believe the abuse it put up with. I had much smaller crashes with the barred well, and I ripped the standoff completely free from the base plate. So I'm a huge fan of this build. I love the heavier frame. And for the first time, I've been a lot more stressed about if my GoPro is gonna survive than I have about the frame. I love this thing. I hope I get to review more FlyFish stuff in the future. This is definitely my new daily driver. Yeah, all in all, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it gives you more confidence in the review to see how much abuse the frame can really put up with instead of just coasting around for a couple hours and calling it a day. Before I close this video out, I just wanted to say, if you like this content, please consider subscribing. It's free, and if you do have the financial means, feel free to check out my Patreon. The links to that and all my other social media accounts where I post daily clips are in the description, so go check them out. And you have a lot to look forward to, because next week I'll be doing my first micro review, and that'll include a giveaway actually. So with all that said, hope you enjoyed the video and happy flying. See you next week.